Back from the dead.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're all invited to go fucking mental on this motherfucking drop. The countdown has just begun. Are you ready? Let's go, 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 go.
Now we're back from the dead. We're back from the dead.
Hell yeah.
We're back from the dead.
Are you ready? Let's go, 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 go. Back from the dead.
We're back from the dead.
Hell yeah.
We're back from the dead. Back from the dead. Back from the dead.
Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to the channel / podcast. This is Ghost Girl Diaries. I'm your lead host, Crystal Leandra, and I'm bringing in Kat right now. Hello, Kat. How are you?
Well, hello. I am very well. How are you?
I am great. I'm back in the studio. I wish I could show it off. I finished painting it. It is pink now, very light pale pink, which I'm sure we'll be able to see that later on like the YouTube channel for everybody that's wondering. But this is our paranormal podcast for viewers that are brave enough to join the circle. So today is dead time. Oh man, we have some tea.
We have all the tea.
Like
all the tea.
This is like one of the this is gonna be a good one. It's been a minute since we've had like a really, really good stream, I think. Oh, and this is a good one. Okay, everybody. So just I want you to like make sure you get some tea, literally. Like I've got some raspberry tea over here. I've got some sparkling water. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Where do we begin is the question. There's a lot to talk about. This will be uploaded to the actual podcast, audio podcast, Ghost Girl Diaries, this week. But today we're doing a dead time review on the new Ghost Adventures episode that just aired Thursday. Did you notice they changed the time? So they've been kind of bouncing around. It's been like Friday and Saturdays for Ghost Adventures, and now suddenly it's Thursdays. So, I mean, as a producer, what do you think about that? Do you think that could be like maybe a ratings issue?
It's a little inconsistent.
Yeah.
I think they're trying to test the waters to see if views go up.
I'm worried about that. Which they're in like what, season 20 something ridiculous, I think.
Ridiculous, yeah.
Yeah, I mean they've been going for a minute, which is really cool. Good for them. I did notice though, this is their new season. I guess I'm out of curiosity. I am gonna look it up to see which season they're in. I did notice that they did not have really good reviews this time around for a season opener. Which is kind of shocking because, you know, okay, we're in season 23. This is episode 1 of season 23. So holy crap.
Wow.
23.
Oh my gosh. That is ridiculous.
23 seasons. Good for you, Ghost Adventures. Okay, so literally the title is Horror in Biggs, California. The crew investigates a demonic entity terrorizing a small California town. So before we dip into too much of the tea that Kat is dying to get into right now.
I'm dying.
It's going to be so good, guys. Like, it's going to blow your mind, okay? But seriously, like, I'm on the Ghost Adventures page. And, in fact, let me try to switch screens for just 2 seconds. See if I can do this. Okay, no, that's viewing party. I have to move this for Kat. Hang on, give me 2 seconds. Okay, moving this over. Okay, so if you guys notice, we're on Amazon Ghost Adventures reviews right now. 2020, season 23. 12 people have rated it, like, 3 stars or less.
Wow.
So people aren't very happy right now about this is only episode 1. I noticed there was a lot of controversy going on. Did you notice that on online, people talking about this episode? There were a lot of fans that were not happy about this. Did you see that, Kat?
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Well, when we have some opinions on it too, you know what I'm saying. So okay,
We do.
yeah. Okay, so let's just start. Should we just jump right in here?
Let's do it.
It's a lot to cover. Like, I don't know how long this stream is going to be. Like, it could take a minute.
I know. I was telling Crystal before we went on that I literally have like 8 tabs open and a notepad full of stuff to chat about. So get ready, folks. It's going to be a good one.
So when this first started, the first episode started, okay, let me keep my restream open so I can make sure I don't miss any comments from you guys. The episode starts, and it's the first thing I was doing Snapchat updates that night. I was just chilling on the couch watching it, and all of a sudden it was like demonic and Biggs, California. I was like, oh, here we go again. Like, more demons. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not discounting it, okay? But like, I was just, the first thing I saw was that, and then they show this guy going through, like, it was literally like a micro trailer, a micro footage slot of an exorcism. Right, with who we know as the bishop and the nun, or I'm sorry, sister, that they go around with Zach, right? Okay, so we see this like micro trailer for like a few seconds. What was your first thought just with the micro trailer?
Really dramatic.
Right.
Like kind of overly dramatic.
Yeah.
And I feel like the amount of times that Zach has said demons, it's kind of like crying wolf at this point, where you're like, is it though?
Right.
Is it actually?
Right.
So.
And so I was sitting there and I was like, oh yeah, here we go. Okay, it's fine. You know what I mean? Like, everything's gonna be fine. Like, let's just calm down. So I was in pain, though. I was in pain seeing the whole, like, demonic thing. And so anyway, let's just jump into the episode, okay? I have, like, some massive notes on this. Yes, I went in very skeptical as far as, like, thinking this was, like, you know, a fake episode. Just, like, showing like an exorcism, I think, as like a brief like flash. Like, I'm really concerned at this point that Ghost Adventures is really just trying to like shock people and like get their attention and like bring them in, you know what I mean, to like, oh my god, like, look what you're gonna miss if you don't watch this episode. It's a freaking exorcism happening. And I'm just like, really, like, God, like, there's other ways to like get the audience attention, but it does concern me that it could be a rating issue. Maybe like ratings are dipping or something like that. So,
Could be.
you know, yeah, like they're trying to like grasp people's attention that even aren't Ghost Adventures fans, like at this point. So, the very first thing they kind of open up saying is that the vibes in Biggs, California just aren't right. And Zach says that they have an emergency situation and that the wife is living in fear. He says it may be a demon or an entity that's also affecting the surrounding neighbors. And then I did like how one thing I did approve of is he walked up to the door and was like, let me handle this by myself first and like let the crew hang back. So to me, like, that was being, I thought, respectful. Like, okay, maybe there is something going on, rather than like bombarding them with like cameras and stuff like that, which could be really overwhelming. So I did like that. So Zach says to the wife, you know, how long has this been going on? It's been going on for over a year, but she says that it's escalating. Now, here's my first like red flag thrown up. Okay. They start showing veteran VFW Army plaques and medallions. Did you notice that?
Mm-hmm.
Did you hear them talk about his time in service at all?
Not once.
Not once.
Not once.
So, I did obviously I'm kind of well versed with military lingo, especially like Army. So I did notice that one of his, I think it was I can't remember if it was a plaque or a medallion, but it said rifle driver on it. So what that means is that, it was a medallion, which means that he was a driver and a mechanic, and that was a badge from the U.S. Army, okay? I also noticed that, I think there was a hat or something that said VFW Post 4173, and I looked it up, which is VFW Post in Woodburn, Oregon. Okay, so what that usually means is if there's a veteran that is particularly from his hometown, or maybe he was like stationed in Oregon, and then he ended up like getting out of the military and then retiring there. That was the VFW post that kind of allotted him the things that we were seeing on television. Okay, so I'm not sure if he's from Woodburn, Oregon, or if he maybe like his last final, POS was there, which means he was stationed there. But anyway, he tells Zach verbatim, this is the devil's town and the devil is here, which, I mean, honestly, when I first saw him, I actually did think he was credible. I don't know how you felt about it. Yeah.
I felt the same.
I'm also going to say that I know a lot of veterans, obviously, and I interact with a lot of veterans, and that includes Blake. And I would only take his word for as it is, because that's how military is. Like, military, they don't, I'm talking like most, not all, obviously, but most military have been trained, broken down in basic training not to lie, okay? And so, in other words, he has nothing to lie about. So I did find him credible, especially with them showing all of his Army medallions and veteran medallions and all that stuff. Especially, that was an opening statement, man. Like, in my opinion, it would have been more captivating rather than seeing, the micro trailer of him having an exorcism. Just hearing that one sentence, which is this is the devil's town, the devil is here, that would have been enough for me to be like, I'm watching this episode. Like, this is good,
True.
Yeah,
it's true.
So he claims it started with 3 knocks on the door, and he heard the door, and then he went to the door, opened the door, and that's basically how this attachment came about. Now, how many people have had, like, literally, I'm asking the audience, how many of you guys have been sitting in your house and you hear knocks at the door, whether it's 3 or not, and you go to the door and there's nobody there? Because I can tell you that it's happened to me more than once. I've even had my doorbell ring, right? And you like,
Yes.
and I have like, as Kat, like, part of me hates the way my house is laid out. I have this like long ass, big, like cathedral ceiling hallway in my house. So if the doorbell rings, like, you have to like literally go running from one side of the house to the other, like, you're like, I'll be there in a minute. It takes a minute to get there. So when someone rings my doorbell and no one's there, I'm like pissed about it. I'm like, look, bro, it just took me like 10 minutes to get over here and nobody's here. But it does make you wonder, is it an entity playing with you, and do they want you to try to like open, you open the door and you let something in? I think I have before. Has it ever happened to you, Kat?
It has.
Yeah, in your apartment?
Like, really distinctly. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Was it after GGD or before?
After.
Was it really? You're like, actually, seriously, it was after.
Yeah.
You're like, it's fine, but you know what I mean?
Everything's fine.
Yeah, so I mean, I totally believed him, but you know, once again, if we're marking what he said, 3 knocks on the door distinctly. So what do we know as mocking the Holy Trinity, right? Like number 3 will pop up, 3 scratches, 3 marks, 3 claws, 3, that number will continue to pop up, okay? Now this is where the episode gets a little weird.
It's hilarious, though.
Just like it gets a little weird, okay? Like, and I was on Snap that night when we were watching it, and I was like, I don't know what's going on. So, and like, no disrespect to him or anybody that's ever dealt with, you know, a succubus, incubus, or anything of that nature.
Yeah.
But I can't get over the fact how he said, I get molested almost 24/7. And he says, and Zach says, like what? Like touching in those areas or what? And he was like, it penetrates. It's penetration. And Zach was like, I'm just, you know what I mean? Like, what did you just, like, right now? So Zach said, he goes, right now.
Like, did he penetrate you right now?
Yeah,
Like,
and he's like, yeah, and I was like, I have to say, like, you know, it's an interesting interview that's going on, and I do find him credible. I do believe it's happening. But did your stomach turn when that happened? Because mine did. Like, I suddenly got really sick when he said that.
yeah, I did too.
And I really thought I was watching an interview that I shouldn't be watching.
There's a definite energy shift.
Like, I was
awkward.
like, okay, this is awkward. And I was just, and then, like, you could tell Zach was like, he didn't really know where to go with it for a minute. Because, like, I think that's the first time in Ghost Adventures history he's ever interviewed someone that was being penetrated at that moment. You know what I'm saying?
Rated R. Jesus Lord.
It was really weird. It was awkward. It was a little awkward, right? So then
It was.
Zach says, you know, do you know what an incubus and succubus is? And he says yes. And then it gets more awkward. Like, it's like if it couldn't get any more awkward, it's just gonna like keep diving another
Keep
level.
going.
You know what I mean? And so he says, specifically, I can feel it the size of a finger. Thank you for the visual. I really appreciate that. I wasn't sure exactly what you're feeling, so now I have an idea.
He went into even more detail.
And
than that.
there was more
Like,
than that. He goes,
okay.
there's 3 claws. And I'm just like, and he's like, and you can feel the claws. And I'm like, okay, like, I think we need to just, like, stop the interview right now. Like, I feel like this is just going.
How would you even go about that? You're just
Thank
like, okay,
you.
wait.
I got
No.
the picture
moving on.
as an empath is just, like, clear as day. Like, I 100% get it, you know? So, and once again, I feel bad for him. Like, I feel bad for him.
Yeah.
But, so he says, he can feel the claw inside him.
Whoa. I mean, he really did probably need some Jesus then, because that's a little uncomfortable.
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't want a claw in my business.
But isn't that kind of like an awkward conversation?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a very normal conversation to have with somebody, so clearly he might have even maybe been, like, a little out of it.
Have you,
You know what I mean?
like,
Just
okay,
talking.
you've been there, like, for us, like, we had an owner, for some, you know, in my opinion, some, not all, owners of locations or innkeepers of locations, I think, are so affected that sometimes they act a little bit crazy or zany. For
Yes.
example, where we did our pilot, the woman was so off the rocker, we couldn't interview her.
Yeah, it was really bad.
Because it was just, like, A wasn't connecting to B, and it was, like, everywhere else. So, you know, can you imagine us doing that interview, Kat, when we had to do ours? And the owner says, I can feel a claw inside me.
Well, there's the door. We'll catch you tomorrow. Have a good night. Okay?
It's just,
Yeah.
I don't know. I still feel like this huge, like, I have a hard time, like, You know what I mean? Like, it's just really weird. And I mean, I guess,
Awkward.
I'm really happy for him to be so transparent, you know what I mean? But still, it was just a real weird conversation.
Little
And like,
too much.
I remember sitting there watching it, and I was like, it just kept getting more awkward, you know? And I was like,
Yeah.
is this interview ever gonna end? Because I feel like it's not. Because I feel like
It did drag on.
It did.
really did drag on.
and I was like,
Kinda comical.
please just stop. Like, I
felt bad.
Like, I need some air. So, but then it gets more serious. Okay, so now we finally kind of calm down. I can only imagine how long that interview actually was. Don't you think it was probably cut short by quite a bit?
Oh, I mean, it felt long, but it was probably cut pretty short, yeah, considering, because he was already out of it.
I
when
think
we
so
got
too.
there. Yeah.
And then he says, quote, "The more I fight, the closer I come to death." What do you think about that?
That was really messed up, but I think he was being honest, especially considering it kind of connected with everything else that was happening around him.
Right.
You know,
That's dark,
It
though, to
brought
say
death.
the more I fight, the closer I come to death. So he basically says he doesn't want to be molested. He doesn't want this stuff to happen. But the more he fights it, he feels that it will kill him eventually, which is just, like, scary, right? Like, to me, that's really
that's
scary.
terrifying. Yeah, you kind of feel for him at that point. When you know. It's
So
serious
the
stuff.
wife says her husband hears voices in the house, and she says initially she didn't believe him, but he went in and did a phone recording of like an EVP on his phone, and it sounded sexual in nature. It basically sounded like two people having sex, and it was a female. And that was when she said she believed that the house was haunted, basically.
Right.
So now we're taking another really weird turn, right? So this episode was like, I feel like I'm having whiplash. You know what I mean? Like, there's weird things happening, really descriptive words. Then when we took another turn, so this was like really scary, like personally, I thought. So she said that he said the next door neighbor started hearing something and started discussing it with them and saying that she was getting 3 scratches that drew blood. It was trying to pull her off the bed. It also knocked at her door, and then something attacked her. They decided to have a priest come out to bless the houses and them. And before the priest made it out, she died. So then suddenly I was like, okay, this is getting kind of serious, right? Like,
Yeah. It was like 4 months before or something. That's
Yeah.
pretty quick.
it was
you know?
really quick. And she was found screaming, and she was being chased by, quote, a demon. He said that her head had turned around, that it picked her up, and it threw her in a ditch. And, wow.
Yeah. It was a lot. The reenactment they had there is actually pretty cool.
Yeah, they did a really,
did
yeah,
that.
that actress was really good, whoever they had. He was using an electroscope, too, which is, it detects static disturbances. I want an electroscope, okay?
Yeah. Yep,
Wasn't that
it looked
cool?
awesome.
I, like, literally, whatever that was he was using, I need to find it. I assume Bill Chappell probably engineered it for them. But
Yeah.
they looked like legitimate, like, Ghostbusters, like, from the 80s.
Yes.
With
I
that.
loved it.
And I was like,
And it
okay,
worked
Ghost
really
Girl
well.
Diaries needs a damn electroscope, okay? You know what I'm saying? Like, we need one.
We're going to get
Um,
one, okay?
And then he was able to detect it, saying it was crawling up his leg, and they were able to use the electroscope, and it was, like, beeping in, which I thought was really cool with EMFs. So
Yeah.
after that is when Zach starts to go to the neighbors, and he says, like, he's trying to interview all these neighbors about the woman that died, and he says that no one wants to talk. Which to me sounds very typical small town, doesn't it?
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep,
Like, we don't want
very
to draw
much.
attention to the small town. We don't want people to think bad of
Weird
us.
people.
Yeah,
Mhm.
like Zach and the crew and like filming this are outsiders. Like, we're safer here. Like, let's not expose
That's
it.
sweeping it under the rug.
Yeah, very much so. Like, well, yeah, clearly, like,
Horrible.
and we'll get to more of that in a second. So they get out of the car to do the interviews, okay? And this is when he finally finds the woman that was like the eyewitness to the woman dying. But did you notice that they added in that creepy Christmas music?
Yes, I did notice that.
That was good.
That was weird.
That was good.
And that was good.
That was good. Like, film-wise, on production level, A+. That was good.
Yeah,
Zach
I
hears a
liked it.
voice in the street. The audio guy doesn't pick it up, okay? First of all, who's that audio guy?
I have no clue. I've never seen him before.
I know, and they're like, he's just helping us with this episode. And I'm like, who's doing audio for them? Was it someone else? Like, I don't know. Anyway.
I don't know. It's weird.
But the audio
Isn't Billy
guy goes,
usually?
no, Billy doesn't usually do it. No, I don't know who their audio tech is, but, the audio guy goes, I didn't have it recording because I was getting out of the car, but I heard it too. So that was obviously a DVP, which is a direct voice phenomena. To me, this is when the episode started to take another turn, right? So they talk to this girl who says she took her kids to the fair, and as they were driving home, they saw this woman running down the street. As they were following her, they rolled the windows down to see if she needed help. At some point, she tripped and fell and hit her head really hard on the cement. She sat up, quote, in a way that was not human-like, is what she said.
Yeah,
And
she got up without using her arms.
Right. She sat up. And then she said she jumped really high. So I'm assuming she meant, like, not human-like. Like, sort of a high jump. That was when they watched her run to the concrete wall frame. Now, this is another little piece that I don't know if everybody caught. They said she was rocking back and forth. What was the guy doing, Tori, while he was being interviewed about being molested?
Oh my gosh, she was rocking back and forth.
So
Yep,
to me,
immediately.
that was like immediate connection. I was like, okay,
Wow.
this is...
Yep, I didn't even think of that.
Yep. So this woman said that the neighbor went up, did a flip up in the air, and then slammed into the ground and fell into the ditch, and she died. I wish Zach would have pursued the interview more. Maybe he did, and maybe it was cut out. But my question is if this neighbor did see all of this, what did she do? Did she go to the police? Did she call on her cell phone?
True.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what was her next step? Like, what happened? Did they go
must be
down and
wanting
see if the
more.
woman was okay in the ditch? Because personally, for me, I wouldn't be able to see someone, like, jumping off a bridge and not be able to go check on them. Because it's not like it was like, you know, the Royal Bridge. Like, we're talking, like, maybe 4 or 5 feet down, it was walkable. You know what I mean?
Right.
Well, I mean, could have been higher than that, but still, there was a hill that they could walk down. And then the neighbor, the woman that saw this happen, said it's as if the black shadow never left her. She felt like she saw a black shadow go up behind the woman, pick her up, flip her in the air, and throw her into the ditch. And this black shadow is also being sort of tailed as everyone who dies has seen the black shadow before their death in the town, which is really strange. So Zach
That is
says
really weird.
it's as if we're dealing with the devil, which I'm going to be real, guys. Like, I don't like the word demon being thrown around a lot, but this was some dark stuff. How do you feel about it, Kat?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel like there's just too many deaths associated with the same circumstances of seeing a shadow or weird things happening and people not feeling good and the energy not being right. So it was pretty dark.
Right. So they come up with another eyewitness that Jay goes and interviews, and she says that her brother died on these steps at this abandoned building. He was found upside down with his head downwards, with his mouth open, which I found that weird that she, like, described it that way.
Yeah.
Did you find that strange? I thought it was kind of weird.
It was very strange. Yeah.
And she's like, this is where we found my brother. And she said, Jay was, like, trying to get, like, paranormal out of her. You know, he was like, so do you think he had an attachment? Like, was there anything going on at home? And the girl kind of, like, sloughs it off. And she's like, well, nothing more than what's typical. And he was like, well, what does that mean?
Right.
And she was like, well, my mother's house is haunted, which is where my brother was living. And they would get, like, doors open and close. They would have chandeliers shake. And there would be 3 knocks at the door. And no one would be there. So
Another
once again, we're
correlation.
going back to correlating another story. You know what I mean? Another
Yeah.
story. So once
Weird.
again, we're talking about deaths. Like, this is serious, you know? And maybe not even demonic necessarily, but possession can still happen without a demon. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's true. And I
She's-
don't think these neighbors are talking to each other.
No.
I mean, I feel like this is so dark that they really wouldn't want to discuss this and like have a party about it.
Well,
You know
can
what
also
I mean?
tell,
Like,
like, the way they're all acting is very small townish. Like, even the neighbor that saw the girl commit suicide didn't want to show her face on TV.
oh yeah,
Like,
terrified.
that says a lot to me. You know, she doesn't want people to know that it was her that talked. There was another one, the woman that was, like, talking about her brother. She was very meek and, like, you know, clearly it wasn't about film because she didn't, like, snazz herself up. She wasn't all dressed up. She was in a hoodie and sad and talking about her brother. So, yeah, like,
Right.
totally believable to me.
Yeah, same.
She said her mom's house where her brother died, she saw a big black shadow, and that was the night that her brother died. So once again, we have another correlation happening.
Yeah.
So this is where we break and we go into the actual investigation. Zach and Jay go out. They totally had Scooby-Doo vibes. Did you get that?
I did.
They're like in the van and like Zach said our cameras aren't working, which I found interesting. That correlates. They were going to all these hot spots that were around town and none of their cameras were working. But he was using like, I think those were hunting binoculars that are
Yep.
night vision and you can record on those. So that was what he was using. And he was like, I just feel weird like going around filming like in a van around town and like watching the streets with night vision
Hint, hint.
binoculars. I'm like, yeah, it is kind of creepy. Like, you should feel weird about that. Like, it's a little weird. And then, let's see, Billy and Aaron, they go and they basically ask Tori to stay and see if they can capture activity with him there. Okay. All right, so this is night vision, so we're doing all this stuff. SLS camera, they found the little figure by Tori's foot on the bed. I did find it interesting that anytime he would say, like, oh, it's on this side of my leg or this side, they would capture, like, EMFs or evidence. Loved that.
There. Yeah.
Loved
It was
it.
very
Thought it was
prominent.
great. Really happy with it. I don't know if you guys noticed,
Yep.
they've been recently been using this thing called a geophone or an EDI meter. You can buy them on, like, ghoststop.com and all those. They're, let's see, I think I have one on here. They are $299. They measure EMFs, ambient thermometer, geophone sensors, and I think depending on which model you get, there's some other things that you can get in there. And then all of the lights will light up. And then that's what Billy says. Oh my gosh, the lights are lighting up. This episode reminded me a lot of a place I filmed at before, which was River's End. Did you ever watch that little pilot I did? I only put like
I
a part of
did.
it up on YouTube. But River's End was this, it was in Antonito, Colorado, and I think there was like 800 people or something. It was really small, and even at that point, a lot of the residents had passed away by the time we went down there to film, so it wasn't a full 800. It was exactly like Biggs, California. So
Really?
yes, like, I guess, like, during the day, it wasn't comfortable. Does that make sense? Like, you don't feel comfortable being there. Like, it doesn't feel like a very positive environment. And then almost like nighttime, like, the whole energy and atmosphere of the whole town changes. That was exactly like Antonito. It was so weird. And you don't feel safe anywhere. And I got that sense of, like, Zach and Jay, like, driving around. Like, they didn't want to get out of the van. There was even a point, like, they were doing, I think, some still photographs near where the woman's brother had been found in the alleyway. And Zach gets out and he's like, just, like, watch my back. Like, whatever you do, just watch my back. He's like, there's just something not right. Like, I don't feel right when I go down that alleyway. And that's
very specific.
exactly how Antonito felt. It makes you, like, feel like there's eyes on you, and I'm not just talking like human eyes, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I also remember in Antonito, the innkeeper had told us, like, oh, you'll be safe, you know, like, you're staying in this beautiful, like, Victorian home. It was the biggest home in Antonito, and she's like, nobody will mess with you because they know you're staying here. And I was like, what does that mean? Like, what does that mean? And she's like, well, if they didn't think you were staying here as a local, like, you could get robbed, you could get kidnapped, there's drug trafficking here, and, like, it's really dangerous. But since they know you're staying here, I was like, how do they know we're staying here? Did you, like, announce it? And she's like, oh, people will drive by and see your cameras and see things here, so they won't mess with you. They already know you're here. They've been watching. And I was like, this is really creepy. You know what I mean? Like, so I really got the same vibes of, like, Biggs, California. All right. Moving forward here, let's see. Yeah, Zach says, I'm nervous to do this in the middle of the night. He's using the hunting binoculars. I thought there was some really good evidence that was captured. One thing that creeped me out was Tori, which is the guy that is having, like, the oppression or whatever. He says he's laying on the bed by Aaron and Billy, and he says, they are looking through my eyes. My eyes are closed, but I can see where you're at. And Aaron says, what?
I love Aaron.
I know. So that was creepy.
Yeah, that is weird.
I mean, and then Zach, this pans back to Zach being in the alleyway. He says, it's a scary alley, dude. Like, you feel like you're going to get killed. And it's not just, you know, people. It's entities, you know.
I found it really interesting that Aaron did this episode after not doing the Demon House one.
Right. That's true. That's a good point.
Because, I mean, you're dealing with something dark either way.
Right.
And being in the home of somebody that's possessed, you know, or becoming possessed, you know what I mean?
That's a good point. Pretty
dark. So I'm wondering if maybe, you know, he's just in a better mindset, or maybe things are, you know, better overall.
Could be.
So.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
That's very interesting.
32 minutes in, they get the shadow person over the fence. What did you think of that footage?
I found it interesting.
It can't be deemed paranormal because it was so far away.
No.
But I did find it interesting. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. It almost kind of looked like, what is that? Like a shapeshifter?
Yep.
It's kind of
because
like
it came out as like a flash of light, and then it moved into like a person, and then it was like it was trying to casually look, and then it walked back. So I did.
Well, that's why I thought the cat, when they saw the animal running around, I thought that was the shapeshifter.
Right. Oh,
that they had seen it. You know what I mean? Like that was it, and then it became. But they saw the animal running around. But who knows? Maybe it was the shapeshifter.
Ooh, that's a good one. I like that. That's a really good idea. I didn't think about that.
Interesting.
Billy says it's intense in the room with him. And then Billy says you need to demand what its name is. Now, we both had opposing ideas about this.
Yeah.
Which is okay. So you talk about what yours is, and then I'll talk about mine.
So when I saw it, I could tell that he was like, I mean, he seemed really chill laying in the bed, you know, asking questions, whatever, but I just felt like it was a little bit pushy of Billy to demand that he ask the name. I mean, he's already uncomfortable as it is, I'm sure, being in like an oppressed state. So I just kind of felt like that was a little much to ask that of him, where he's already kind of suffering as it is.
Right.
But I understand your take on it, though.
And then my take on it was Billy was saying, like, you need to demand what his name is. And so the guy says, what's your name, buddy? Okay. So the minute Tori said that, everything made sense to me. What I'm saying is, Billy was saying demand his name because Tori has allowed this to happen, right? You know, like possession and oppression, even, you know, your house being haunted, whatever. It only happens if you allow it to happen. I have said in the past that I believe oppression and possession can only happen two ways, and I still stick by that. Either A, you want to know what it feels like, so you allow it to happen, or B, you may not be in the most stable mindset. Whether there's mental illness involved or not, it still can occur. You can still be in a poor, you know, mental state, whether it's a actual, you know, clinical diagnosis or not. You can still have depression without a clinical diagnosis, or just not be mentally strong. I don't think that Tori necessarily wants to experience possession, but I do think that he allowed it, especially by saying, Billy's saying, you know, take command of it, saying, like, you know, what's your name, like, da-da-da-da-da. Then Tori says, what's your name, buddy? And I'm like, are you guys buddies? Are you telling me, like, whatever's haunting your house, like, you're buddies with him? Because that tells me everything. That tells me why you've allowed this to happen and how it's opened up.
Well, and it would make sense, too, if he hasn't had anything happen to him yet, but everyone else is being affected.
Right.
Meaning they're going down with the ship, and he's the one that's harboring it, and he's allowing it, and he's not, in a bad
well, I
state
mean, like, okay,
yet.
you don't just get oppressed, first of all. You don't just get possessed. That's like, I don't think he was actually possessed. I think there was oppression going on. But,
same.
you don't just get oppressed. It takes a long time. It starts with knocks on the walls, and it starts with doors slamming. And, like, if you don't take care of it in those early stages, it's just going to slowly keep moving in, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse. Like, we've seen that not just with this episode, but obviously with other episodes and even other TV shows. You see the same pattern happening over and over again. And just like this, what's your name, buddy? Why would you talk to an entity in your house like that, Kat?
No. No.
Hey, buddy, how are you doing? I know that you're possessing me, but I just want to know how your day was going. I hope you need a snack. I can make you a snack. Like, you don't offer, pleasant conversation. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. Are you on a keto diet? No.
Yes.
And then it says it answers, and it's like a weird frequency, sort of like a growl noise, which I thought was really cool. I liked how they set up sort of that frequency. They had Billy's phone on speakerphone, and then Aaron's phone was on speakerphone with a Bluetooth microphone. I thought that was really cool. Like, how simple is that? But, like, perfect experiment to be able to set it up. Loved it.
I love that, too.
Let's see, I'm looking here. Zach gets back. He says, I don't feel, so they release Tori after all that stuff happens. And once again, he's saying, like, I feel it, like, crawling up my leg. I feel it on my knee. I feel it on my hip. And it's like, yes, we know you're accurate, Tori, but, like, when you're feeling something like that, say, get away from my leg, or, you know what I mean? Like, you've let it now fester in your house, and now it's just gotten worse and worse. And now it's obviously out of control where you can't control it anymore. So Zach decides to go back, and he says, so they release Tori. He says, I don't feel anything in here now. I did find one other quote really interesting. He said, it needs a host, and it stays with the host.
Yeah, that's messed up.
Which I thought was accurate, though, right? Like,
it is.
This guy, like, wound up dead with his mouth open with the similar issues. This woman ended up dead in a ditch. Like, yeah, I agree with that statement, like, wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I do too.
Multiple deaths, and now we're bringing in the tea. Is everybody ready for the tea?
Are y'all ready? I don't think you're ready.
I don't think that I'm ready for the tea, personally. I just don't think I'm ready for it. Okay, this is the good part.
Where do we start?
Bishop Brian, comes in, and he says that he's going to perform a minor rite of exorcism. So let me just finish the episode first.
All right.
And then we'll get to the tea. Okay, we're almost there.
And we'll go into it. Okay.
Kat's like, okay, I'm ready though. I'm ready.
I'm ready.
So he says, and we've seen Bishop Brian before with, what's her name? Sister Mary? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. He's going to do the Solomon blessing. Aaron says he feels like he has an arrow through his head and he can feel it. And Zach says he feels it through his chest. Now we're 3.5 minutes left of this episode. And I personally couldn't get through this. Like, it was, like, really hard, okay? Like, when there's 3.5 minutes left, you're like, oh, we're almost done. Like, this is a good episode. Like, should have probably just ended there. We're good to go. You know what I'm saying? 3 days later, Bishop Brian comes in with Sister Mary. They're going to, quote, free him of the entity. Tori says that he feels pressure on his head. I did notice that his head was, like, bright tomato red. Did you see that?
It was very red.
Yeah, and if you looked at the other like, everyone's sitting at the table, and his head is the only one that's red, and he's saying he feels pressure. Bishop asks, how are you feeling? I feel like the lights are bugging me, and his voice sounds different. He starts coughing, gagging. He says, it's in my throat, which I was like, get it out. I was like, get it out. Like, Jesus. And then he starts coughing, gagging, pouring holy water on him. They lift his shirt up, pulling holy water. Rosary, St. Michael prayer. Tori starts wheezing, coughing hard. He's throwing up. He's wailing. He's screaming. His skin is bright red. They're saying, release him. They're slapping him with holy water. Sister says, get my rosary, get my rosary. I dropped my rosary. She says, lift him up, he's choking. And then all of a sudden the sister goes, come on, brother, fight. Come on, brother, just breathe. Like literally with that slang, okay? Which I was laughing at. Is that wrong? Like I was laughing at that. He starts to spit up. He spits on the floor. He's spits in the bucket. He's got drool coming out. He spits all over his shirt. His wife is crying. The sister hugs the wife, gives her a holy hug, says it's gonna be okay. We've got this. It's a minor rite of exorcism. Tori it does one on. He's also blessed. The home's blessed. The wife is blessed. Blessing to all the people. And the closing image is shockingly, just seems a little
Similar to...
doesn't look similar to something. What was that closing image looked like, Kat?
Yeah, you know, I mean, not like The Exorcist or anything.
Yeah, a little bit. Closing image is the bishop walking out holding a briefcase, black coat, black round hat, and he's throwing holy water everywhere. And I hate to say it, but I was like, Exorcist all the way. Literally from what year was The Exorcist? The 60s or 70s or something?
Yeah.
The movie?
Yeah.
And I was like, ugh.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know. In my opinion, like I feel like we shouldn't be making it look like a movie if we're really trying to help people. So this is the tea. Okay, are we ready for this? Because this is gonna be Kat taking over pretty much from here on out. I'm gonna have a couple little psst in, but not as much as Kat. So I told Kat, I said, okay, look, this Bishop Brian dude, okay, and Sister Mary, I've looked them up before. I've talked about him on the old YouTube channel. And I said, I have some concerns. And I said, I'm going to have Kat get involved in this. Yeah. And what that means is, Kat, you were raised extremely Catholic. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was baptized Catholic as well, Roman Catholic.
And you still somewhat practice it? Your family practices it?
Yeah, we're Anglican Catholic now, so it's a little bit different, but it's still like the same forms, like the Latin Mass and such.
And you're very, very well versed in Catholic. Very well versed. So I say, okay, Kat, here's all of these links. I said, here's the link to his church. Here's his personal Catholic bishop's website. Here's his Facebook link. Here's his Twitter link. And I said, what I want you to do is I want you to go ham and I want you to break this apart. Because what I had exposed before with Bishop Brian was that he was going around initially a few seasons back. Zach had introduced him as like Dr. Bishop Brian or something. And what I had found out was his doctorate was from a metaphysical school. And I said, look, you know, that doesn't mean he hasn't like studied any less than someone else with an actual doctorate, but his is not an accredited doctorate. So what that means is he went to a metaphysical school. It was probably really expensive, out of pocket. They don't take regular student aid, such as like FAFSA or student loans, because it's kind of like a for-profit school, basically. If you know what those are, you'll have to look it up. For-profit schools they are not legitimate in the eyes of the actual education system, much like getting a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, et cetera, et cetera. And so I had exposed him saying, like, he shouldn't be going around calling himself a doctor when he's not really a doctor. Like, I'm sorry, but, like, he doesn't have an actual doctorate. Like, yes, he did study an X amount of years to get a doctorate degree, but it's a doctorate in metaphysics from a metaphysical school in Sedona, Arizona, and I didn't like that. So after that, funny, somehow he just stopped calling himself a doctor, which is ironic to me. Maybe it was my stream. I don't know. Anyways, moving forward, now I'd like to know about some of his bishop stuff. And I couldn't really break this apart before because I don't know, you know, the Catholic religion. It would be something I would have to study before I opened my mouth. So I'm going to let Kat take this over and spill some massive tea if everybody's ready for this, okay?
Hey,
go ahead, Kat. I don't know where you want to start, boo, but I'm going to let you take it over, okay?
Okay, so first off, I want to start on his Twitter page, which is public, obviously. So if you guys want to look him up, he's at Exorcist Bishop. Sorry if I do a little eye roll. Fine. His profile says Exorcist Bishop for the Old Catholic Order of Exorcists, Metaphysician, and Esoterist. Okay, so we're going to chat about those three things first before we go any deeper, because I was really interested in knowing what the Old Catholic Order of Exorcists is, mainly because from a Roman Catholic standpoint, exorcisms are pretty much only given to a small handful of people, and you have to do pretty rigorous training to even get that title, be able to do those things, and you have to get a lot of permission. So there's a lot of documentation that has to go down before you can even do the whole exorcist thing from the Roman Catholic perspective.
Isn't that also
So
years and years of practice, like priesthood and all that stuff?
Yes.
Years and years.
Oh, yeah. And
Okay.
I have, like, huge thing about that, too. That's a huge tea spill. So he says, exorcist bishop for the Old Catholic Order of Exorcists. So I looked them up. Order of Exorcists is with an archbishop, who is hierarchy from a regular bishop. And his name is Ron Beal. And he is legit. I did look up his documentation. He does have time in a seminary, working with churches, being a priest with a church. But essentially what it is a sacred order of St. Michael the Archangel. And it's an order of exorcists that are not under the Vatican. So essentially it's kind of its own unit outside of the Roman Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. They still have to get technically approval by a bishop in the area, or like a part of whatever diocese that person's a part of, but it's literally a branch, an independent branch outside Vatican. Mm-hmm. So they kind of have a little bit easier of a time doing exorcism without needing to get permission from the Pope or an archbishop to do an exorcism.
So normally, though, you do have to get permission from the Pope, mm-hmm. and you have to be a well-versed, well-trained. I mean, it starts in priesthood and goes up from there, right? And like you have mm-hmm. to dedicate your life to God, basically, to get to a point where you can be called a bishop and actually perform exorcisms. It's a huge deal.
It is. It is. So I looked some information from the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. So it kind of breaks down some frequently asked questions for people that want to know about exorcisms, how they're done, why the church needs them, what the difference is between, there's two different types of exorcisms. There's minor and major. Minor is kind of like the basics of having a sinful life. You know, if you have a very simple life and you want to kind of lead a light path, or, you know, be there in Christ, someone will come and do a minor rite exorcism and rid you of those sins and forgive you of those sins and bless your house and just kind of like cleanse you and the area. Mm-hmm. Then you have the major one, which is an actual bodily demonic possession, and that requires code of canon law, which is something else I can also get into as well later, that talks about specific permissions that are needed, specific documentations, who you contact as your local ordinary, which is a bishop. It's pretty much another word for bishop in a diocese. Mm-hmm. And again, it's broken down in different segments. So you have Episcopalians, you mm-hmm. have Anglicans, you have Roman Catholics, you have all these different branches, right, that branch off in churches. So I'm just specifically looking at Roman Catholic because mm-hmm. that's what he is naming himself, essentially. Okay. So I'm just talking about that. Each faction has their own, but it all pretty much goes through the same unit, which is in Rome, to the Pope. You need to get it approved to the Vatican. So that is kind of the basics about what an exorcism is, what approvals we need, all right? Now, he says that he's a bishop, okay, and I noticed in his photo that he has a little, like, red skull cap on. That is actually called a zucchetto in Italian, and that essentially just means skull cap. And different priests in the church have different zucchettos, different color skull caps. So, for example, cardinals that are, you know, there with the Pope wear red zucchettos, mm-hmm. and bishops wear purple ones. So I was a little confused why he was wearing a red zucchetto, because he's not a cardinal.
So which is sort of higher? Which is higher?
Higher is a cardinal.
A cardinal, okay.
Higher is a cardinal. Cardinals actually end up becoming popes after a while. So, you know, let's say this pope passes away, they will actually look into the cardinal faction to find their new pope. Okay. So they kind of have like a meeting and do that. So cardinals are very high up there. So I'm not too sure why he's wearing one.
And so Bishop Brian, just to make it clear, is mm-hmm. wearing a red cardinal.
Zucchetto.
The zucchetto. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he's wearing the red skull cap in his photos.
And this is like the highest of the high you can go, which is years and years and years of training. And you're mm-hmm. like, okay, I would like to see what your training is then, good sir.
Yes. So then I started looking deep into his training and what he did. So first I want to talk about what it takes to become a bishop. So I'm going to start there, and then I'm going to go into what he has actually done, which surprisingly isn't a lot, but we'll get there. So pretty much what it takes to become a priest is you have to have a 4-year college degree in theology. After college, you go to a seminary, which is essentially a school to become a priest, for about 4 or 5 more years on top of the college degree you just did. Followed by that, you work as what's known as a deacon, which is essentially like an assistant that helps the priest of a church you decide to do work in. And you get like credits or points. And once you do a certain amount of servitude as a deacon, the bishop of that diocese appoints you as a priest. So then you can kind of go and have your own church, and you can go and be a priest and do that. After a certain amount of time being a priest, a bishop essentially has to nominate you to the Vatican. So a bishop is chosen by the Pope. They literally go to Rome. So this is like years and years of studying, years and years of dedication, abstinence, everything. Like, you know, you dedicate your life to God. And once a bishop of that diocese turns 75, so if he lives to be 75, he has to write a formal resignation letter to the Pope. Then if you're nominated, because you'll already be a priest at that point, the current bishop, before he retires, will submit your name to the archbishop, works in the Vatican, or with that segment of cardinals, and they will put your name in for consideration. They'll have a meeting. That meeting will kind of narrow down some candidates about who they're looking to be the new bishop of a specific diocese, and that takes months and months of time to make that decision.
And years of training as a priest.
And years of training. Yep. And you might not even make it, so you have to wait again for another bishop to come in that makes it to 75, and then you have to do that whole other thing again. So there are a lot of people that don't end up becoming bishops because it's just very specific. It's based off how you are personally, you know, the dedication you've given to certain churches as well. So, you know, they narrow it down to the candidates. If you make the cut, the final names will be sent to the Pope for final say, and then they'll go to Rome and they become a cardinal, or they become a bishop, and they'll get appointed and sent to their diocese.
So the Pope essentially has last say in who's titled bishop.
Yep, he does.
That's a big deal.
So it is a huge deal, and it's a high honor because, I mean, you spend all of those years pretty much having that as an end goal. If you've been really wanting to be a bishop, a spokesperson for your diocese, that's even bigger than a priest.
Right.
So it takes a long time for you to become a bishop, and he's what, Crystal, like?
I think he's around
45,
42, 45, yeah.
42? Okay, so here's where it gets interesting. I was interested about his credentials. Now, on his Twitter page, he has a link on there where you can click on it, and it talks about a church that he's a part of. He pretty much started this church. It's an independent, apostolic, esoteric Catholic church. So esoteric means literally the study of yoga, alchemy, magic, spiritualism, astrology, meditation, mysticism, and occultism. Okay, so he literally started a faction of church, a Catholic church, and he's calling it Catholic. And it has a huge picture of, you know, Jesus in the banner and everything. So I was just a little confused because the messages were a little construed with that. So then I was even more fascinated as to who he was, what his credentials were. So if you click on the website and you go to the staff section, you'll actually see a whole segment of his history that he wrote, pretty much his own like little biography talking about him and his experiences.
No, this is this in our notes? This is the Order of the Exorcist one, WordPress, is that what it is?
Order of the Exorcist is where he does his exorcisms.
Okay.
So let me let me link it. Hang on a second. Here.
I was
This
just
is the
going to
website.
open it so that anyone watching right now could see it. Or is this Catholic Bishop site? Is this the USCCB site?
This is the Nicolean.org on his Twitter. I just put it in the documents if you want to click on it. Actually, let's see here. Actually, yes, it is the Order of Exorcists.
So Order Exorcist Atlanta?
Yep, that one right there.
Okay. I'm going to drag this over so we can kind of look at it as Kat's talking about it. Go ahead, keep going, Kat.
Okay. He says that he's a semi-retired bi-ritual Eastern Orthodox Catholic bishop. He also currently provides private instruction for Jito Zen, meditation, mysticism, prayer, which it all kind of goes back to that esoteric definition that we talked about before. Says, and I quote, "Through the process of exploring several Roman Catholic contemplative religion orders, he decided upon pastoral ministry and was accepted into the Roman Catholic Diocese of Palm Beach, Florida." So that's a seminary. So that's a place where you would go to become a priest. So he was accepted into a Roman Catholic diocese to start the process of becoming a priest, which is about 4 or 5 years of your time. It says that he entered the seminary to become a priest, and within a short amount of time, he discovered irreconcilable spiritual corruptions within the program and left to pursue his education privately. So I would assume in a very short period of time, he probably didn't even complete a year of his 4 or 5 years of seminary work to become a priest.
So he didn't really technically ever become a priest because he ended up leaving early.
He didn't, correct. So essentially what he ended up doing was going to school and got a degree in psychology. He was really interested in working with clinical facilities that had behavioral issues, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, traumatic brain injuries, so on and so forth, which would in turn have a correlation with demonic possession, because that is something that's brought up a lot in the church, as well as making sure everybody gets medical examinations before you do the actual exorcism. And there's other things as well. So I was assuming that's probably why he got the degree, was to correlate with the exorcism aspect of that. He said that it says during this time, he also completed postgraduate work in education, philosophy, and metaphysical science, which is the point that Crystal talked about earlier. After many years after exploring different religions while holding a particular emphasis on Buddhism, which was another really confusing point.
So wait,
for
we
me,
just got sideswiped with something else now.
What?
So he's practicing ancient Catholicism and mixing it with Buddhism and metaphysics.
Yeah, it's a lot.
What?
It's a lot. I know. It literally doesn't make sense to me.
And as a Catholic, how do you, and I know, you don't necessarily practice it. You still, have your family and they're involved and you love them and you support them. Mm-hmm. But, do Catholics support Buddhism and metaphysics?
The thing with, no, from a spiritual standpoint, yeah, the faith aspect of it. But, unfortunately, the Roman Catholic Church is very, specific and very narrow-minded and traditional, and,
Black and white.
Very to the point.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I was very confused as to why he would be a part of a church that's labeling itself as a Catholic church, but it's not even part of the diocese at all.
But they're not part of the diocese. He hasn't put in the time that he's supposed to have the title of the bishop, and he is practicing ancient religion, which is Catholicism, and mixing it with metaphysics,
current times,
which is paranormal, and Buddhism.
Yeah.
Which, is really confusing, right? Super confusing.
It is. Yeah, and
this is on his website, orderoftheexorcistatlanta.wordpress.com.
You go right on his Twitter. It's a link right there. It's literally the only link, and if you go to the staff section, it's all right there.
So basically, he's calling himself a bishop and has not done the training to be a bishop.
Correct.
Yet he's admitting that he is part of the Catholic Church, but a separated congregation part of the church that he sort of created himself. Which means he basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, he basically appointed himself as a bishop.
Yes. And he's wearing a cardinal skull cap. So I'm just very confused.
And he's wearing a cardinal skull cap, which is the highest of the high that you can go.
Yeah.
And he appointed himself it.
Yeah.
Now, what does that mean?
It's a good question. I wish I had the answer to that. Because it's literally
Jesus Lord. Is he a narcissist? Is that part of the problem?
Oh, it gets better. It gets better. So, yes, I will say yes to that, probably. He also mentioned in his bio that he was privately mentored in a Catholic theology because he was really fascinated with that for many years by a pastor of a diocese in Philadelphia. And, when you're looking at the Catholic Church from a pyramid standpoint, pastors aren't really like part of the cream of the crop there, and that's nothing against them. It's just there's different factions for each. Pastors have a little bit more lenience. They can get married, they can have sex, they can do things that monks can't do or fathers can't do. Or, you know what I mean?
Bishops
so it's a little
can't
bit
do.
less restrictive,
Right.
but they can still spread God's message or
Right.
whatever that. Okay, so I think he's done a lot of research on his own, and with that, he has a PhD or he has, a degree in psychology. I think he has a little bit of an air about himself. And don't get me wrong, reading actually some of his responses, a lot of people had questions regarding the episode and what an exorcism was and other things, and he was actually very cordial in his responses.
He was
so
cordial,
by no means
yeah.
am I saying that he's an a-hole or anything like that. But I'm just, it's a little misconstrued, the information he's saying. If he wants to be an esoterist and kind of separate from the Catholic Church, like, don't call your church Catholic and then say you study Buddhism.
And he
I'm
also
not
has what's
understanding-
picture is on the Order of the Exorcism site. What's the first picture that pops up?
It's the Last Supper of Jesus, literally. And then they have in the staff section, it's a picture of Jesus crucified. It's almost kind of like he's kind of teeter-tottering on current times when it comes to Catholic religion and wanting to change that.
Right.
But he thinks that if he slaps Jesus photo up there, it's going to kind of hide all that, or people aren't going to really cause a big scene about it.
Or
But
question
when
it.
you really dive deep, there really is. It's very strange to me. It's just
Right.
very strange. So
Yeah, and I'm
Then
not
move
saying
on.
that he's like, here, look, let me just throw in a couple little like keys. One, to get an exorcism done is almost impossible, especially if you're not Catholic, okay? So there's people out, if you're Catholic, you're more, you have to go to the archdiocese of your area and get approvals, okay? Now, if you're not Catholic, it's more restrictive, okay? It can still happen, but it's very hard, it takes months, and it's restrictive. So, I mean, is Bishop Brian trying to help people? Probably. Like, I don't think
so.
he's doing harm or, like, intentionally doing harm. But I guess we're confused by the title bishop when, to become a bishop, he's appointed himself, which isn't really how Catholic works, because he obviously has, like, Catholic Church on his website regarding, like, where he's from. So it's almost like to me, it, like, throws people for a loop. Is that what you think he's trying to do? It's like people
is. I
see like
think-
Catholic Church and they're like, oh, he's been appointed, by the Pope as a bishop. But then you start looking at his background, you're like, wait a second, I don't
not.
think so. This is not what's happening. So
He's not, period.
right, he's appointed. So I guess what I was telling Kat was this: the only comparison that I can hand out to like help draw a visual for everyone is, in the United States, it is legal to start your own religion, right? Like, we have freedom of speech, thank God, and we can, start a business, a nonprofit of any religion if we wanted to. We should start a paranormal church, okay? Where we just do ghost hunts on Sundays. That's what I'm gonna do. But, like, so he has the right to start his own religion 100%.
Absolutely.
He has, obviously appointed himself as a bishop, which doesn't really make sense when he is throwing Catholic Church in there with his, like, jargon. I don't really get that. So he's throwing people for a loop that don't really know about Catholicism. He has the right to do this because he's created his own church. But the only way I can sort of compare this for you guys to, like, get a visual is sort of what, like, Ron Hubbard did creating Scientology. He took a little bit of pieces of things that he liked and created Scientology, and then now look at what it is today. And now we have, this guy, but once again, going back to a little bit of narcissism or like thinking highly of himself, using the name bishop probably isn't a good idea, but I think he's doing it to try to get people that don't know better to take him serious as like an exorcist. And the other issue is the whole red hat thing, okay? Like, he clearly knows what the red hat means, right, Kat?
He does.
Which is highest in the chain next to Pope, basically, is what you're saying to me?
Yep.
And he's wearing the red hat to make him look like he has credentials. And the problem is when you start digging into his actual credentials, like I don't know what makes him think people won't look into his history and his credentials. And with that being said, I asked Kat earlier, theoretically, how many Catholics, like actual Catholics, do you think really watch Ghost Adventures? Probably not a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, or ex-Catholics don't care or whatever. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
I have some concerns with like the whole like not being fully transparent thing. Like Kat even said that, like, it's one thing, like he wants to start his new church and like do this, like, you know, tie Catholicism, old ancient Catholicism in with like metaphysics and with Buddhism and like meditation. Fine, do it, but be transparent about it. Don't slap Jesus's face on it. Don't be wearing a red, you know, little cap. And don't call yourself bishop. Like, be, you know, like, you need to do things like, if you're really creating your own image in your own church, you should do it, like, to the full extent. Not, like, trying to recreate an image of a religion that you're claiming, like, you left priesthood for because you couldn't get along with some of the ideologies that they had, right? I mean, essentially is what he said.
Yeah. He's kind of, I mean, from the viewpoint that I'm seeing, he's kind of cheating the system a little bit. Because in order for you to do an exorcism, you have to be a Bishop Oprah ministry. And I think the thing that really got me was when he commented back to a fan who asked a question about, are you not allowed to speak to the entity about its spiritual, like, knowledge? And he responded and said, it's not a good practice and it would violate standard protocols. But as the presiding bishop over this ministry, I ultimately make the final decision as to what I should and should not do. Right. So I just find that really misleading. You know? Because what if a random Joe Schmo that doesn't know what they're doing starts a religion and now they're doing exorcisms people because they pointed, you know, that's how people get hurt.
Well, that's also, you know, what he's doing, basically, which I'm not discrediting him, but he's a random Joe Schmo. And he's doing exorcisms, unfortunately. He hasn't really been fully trained by the Archdiocese, which is very scary. And, you know, part of the people get mad because, like, oh, the Archdiocese, you know, it's so hard to, like, get approvals for an exorcism. You have to be Catholic for an exorcism. Not everyone that needs an exorcism is Catholic, which I agree with all of that. But part of the reason the Archdiocese works the way they do with exorcisms, which is, like, hush-hush on the down low, there's a reason for that. And one is to keep it from spreading, right? And I'm saying keep it from spreading is, like, if it is demonic possession, they don't want, like, a bunch of cameras everywhere and stuff like that. It's usually on the hush-hush. And they don't want the demon, if it is an actual possession, to be hopping from other people to another person. They're trying to do it quiet, deal with it, keep it quiet so that it can just, this person can heal from whatever they went through. Because there's a lot of people like, there's like underground files, you know, in the Vatican of exorcisms. Absolutely there is, 100%.
And you can find some of them.
And they're hidden because they don't want, like, you're not supposed to repeat the demon name. Like, you know, like they're not keeping it hidden to, like, hush-hush talk from people. They don't want it to harm more people, which to me makes a lot of sense. And Ashley just had a really good question that I'm going to read in 1 second, so I'll get to that in 1 sec, Ashley. But with that being said, is people should be taking this more serious, and if he was a bishop in the actual Catholic Church going on TV doing these even minor rites of exorcisms, there's a 99% chance that the Pope or the Vatican would come in and shut him and his church down immediately.
Oh, immediately. I mean, the reason why there are so many different restrictions on exorcisms is because Emily Rose actually did happen. Somebody actually did die while an exorcism was being performed, and that's why things have to be very strict. You really have to make sure that this is an actual exorcism. You have to have video evidence. You have to have written documentation. Like, this is a huge thing. And that's why...
And they want to make sure that there isn't a mental illness being involved.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, there's protocol and steps to this. It's not just like, oh, someone's got a demon in them, send Bishop Brian out tomorrow. Like, it should be a bigger protocol than this. And it's one thing I don't like with this Ghost Adventures thing, that they've had him out a few times, is... I also don't want people at home to get the wrong idea of A, thinking they can perform an exorcism by themselves at home, or B, other people thinking they can perform on other people, because it's not like that. That's not how it works. Like, you've had to dedicate
Right.
your life to God. Like, you have to be so holy, and that is how you help these people. And it needs to be out of like giving your life to God and helping these people. Now Ashley has another question, and this is the second part of the tea for Kat.
It is. I was gonna get
What
there
is the
too.
deal with the lady that comes with him? Not like any other sister I have met. What's your opinion? This is regarding Sister Mary.
Yes. So the biggest thing that I actually chatted about with Crystal, poor thing, I was calling her like 5 times. Every time I got to an episode, I'd pause and be like, "Oh my gosh, the tea." It was very strange for me to see a sister outside of the cloth, essentially meaning they're not in their blue robes, or if they're starting out as a sister.
Let me see if I can
or
pull
in
up
their
a
black and
picture
white
while you're talking about that. Go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, yeah. And, I was very interested in that because you are obviously, you have your monastery, which is for monks, and then you have the other part of it, which is, for nuns, for women. And I actually ended up finding her information, Sister Mary, so she's called.
So Kat is
right
saying,
under-
real quick, Kat, 1 second. Kat is saying if someone is an actual sister or a nun, they should be in actual sister sort of get up, right?
In the cloth, yeah.
In the cloth,
Mm-hmm.
yep. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and it was just very strange for me to not see her in that, which is fine. I mean, it's no prerogative to me. I've just never seen a sister outside of the cloth.
Right.
And I looked her up, and she's actually a part of the church.
Sister
that
Mary, right?
Sister Mary is a part of the church that Bishop Brian started. So her, and it's also on that website as well, on his Twitter page.
I'll
she said
link
that
the
she's a
website for you guys so that you can go on there and look if you so desire to.
So, yes, so her name's Sister Mary. She says that she's been fascinated by the paranormal since she was a little girl, and she's always been very spiritual and felt something very deep within herself that was meant to be a warrior. She said that she could never really find a permanent home in the mainstream church, but kept a personal relationship through Native American shamanism. So I was really confused.
Q Crystal.
Q Crystal. Yeah.
Q Crystal. Okay. So she has an interest / studied shamanism, Native American shamanism. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go. Like, why do I always have to look like the a-hole? You know what I mean? Like,
Listen, it's facts. Facts are facts.
I am 2 generations off the res. My grandmother, I was very close to, Native American, lived on the res. Okay. Had a very hard life on the res. Left when she was 19 to go to fashion school. Met my grandfather, dropped out of fashion college. Had my mom. And then that's how I got here. Okay. So this isn't very far from me as far as talking about shamanism.
Yeah.
To say you've studied or practiced shamanism is like the most ridiculous thing, and it will just make me laugh all day. To be honest with you. Because shamanism is something that would not be in a book. Okay? You can say that there's been people that have wrote books on shamanism and they could be accurate, but honest to God, when it comes to an actual shaman and like the practice of a shaman, it has to be on the res. These are like medicine men and women that have practiced for generations and generations, and the knowledge of those shamans are kept very secretive and holy in a sense of like my Native American family, right? Meaning they would not put their ancient studies, practices, and medications in a book to be sold at a library or checked out, okay? So when I, and it's okay for Sister Mary to say like she's interested in like shamanism and like she studied it, but like you don't really know what an actual shaman is unless you've lived on the res. And no offense, but unless you have, your family is from the res, like my family, you're not going to just get to go hang out and like listen to a medicine man or woman talk about shamanism and like teach you their ways. There's no way, because they keep that very sacred within the tribe. And I'm going to be honest, my family's Cherokee, right? So and my grandmother grew up on the res. Cherokee's not the same shamanism as Navajo or as Blackfoot or as any other tribe in the United States. Every tribe is sacred and holy in their own sense. So what you could learn from my family with shamanism on the Cherokee Res in Oklahoma would not be the same as the Blackfoot or as the Navajo. Not the same. So I kind of laughed when I saw that she was like interested in like reading and studied shamanism, because I'm like, how? You would get further learning shamanism if you lived on the res and you were native. They, you know, I hate to say this, but like, I'm just going to say it because I am Native American. I'm very freaking proud of my background. My family went through some shit for me to get here, if you know what I'm saying. And I'm just going to say that there's a lot of ideologies of not trusting outsiders if you're not from or on the res. And you wouldn't be able to just walk on the res and like find out information, because they just don't trust outsiders most of the time. And that's because their land was taken. They were murdered. They were killed. That was genocide. They were shoved off of their land. Why would they still to this day trust outsiders? They don't. So to say you've studied shamanism and like maybe if and or practice it, geez, gag me with a sword from Satan, because that's hilarious.
No, really
okay. So anyway, I hope I made my point clear, because nothing you can find about a shamanism and like actual shaman or medicine men and women are ever going to be in a book. You're not going to find it in a book. It's not going to be in a book. That is sacred practice that is only practiced with the natives and with each tribe. So anyway, hope my point's clear. Go ahead, Kat.
It's clear. It's very clear and very important to know. I mean, these are important facts that people
Well,
don't know
it's just
about.
like you don't like poo on another culture, and like, you know what I mean? Like poo. Like same with like you're Catholic. Like you don't really necessarily study it now, but your family does, and you love your family. So to you, this is sort of poo-pooing Catholicism, something you've studied and learned your whole life. And the same with shamanism and my native family. Like, don't play that. Like, my family went through hell for me to get where I'm at, and like, I'm not gonna forget that. You know what I mean? And so when people talk about that, I'm like, please don't make me laugh. Go ahead.
Yeah. Monica, to answer your question, is this why she thinks she can call herself a sister? So she's not really a nun. She is not. She is a 22-year veteran of law enforcement, and most of it was spent in specialized units as a veteran of the U.S. Army.
I'm sorry. Wait a second. I just had a seizure.
Yeah.
Just 1 second.
Yeah.
1 second. Okay. You're telling me Sister Mary is a ex-law enforcement official, and she's a veteran. Thank you for your service. She was a military police MP.
Yeah, 22
That's what it means, an MP in the military in the United States Army, because I know military terms. So, and now she's practicing as a Sister Mary?
She was appointed by the bishop.
Oh, because he's a bishop that's appointed himself.
He's a bishop, and
he
he
appointed
can do
himself.
whatever he wants.
Right.
He appointed her as a religious sister, which is verbatim what it says on her biography here, in the Order of the Seven Archangels. She also holds the minor order of exorcist as the lead exorcist direct assistant. So she has zero.
Yeah, so what's it take to be a nun? Do you know what it takes to be a nun besides a lot of abstinence? Right? I mean, am I wrong?
It's literally, no, you're not wrong. It's the same thing. I mean, you can get a college degree if you really want one, but as far as I know, to be part of the convent and be a sister, you have to dedicate yourself to the convent.
Right.
And you work your way up.
And don't you usually like live with the other sisters and stuff like that?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
It's really beautiful. I've actually seen them. You can actually stay in some of them too when you travel Europe.
Really?
They're really, really nice. They're very nice. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and it's very simple, very, very simple. But you know, I mean, whether you're in the convent as a nun or you're working your butt off to go and be a priest or a bishop, like either way, there's a ton of work and dedication going into that. So for it to be appointed and her have zero religious experience from like, you know, a seminary standpoint, she didn't study anything. The only thing that she went through that was really sad. She did get hit in 2012 in a car accident and was severely injured by a motorist who was under the influence of alcohol and drugs. So she
had a near-death experience.
And because of that near-death experience, it brought her back to the church. But I'm assuming not the Catholic Church. It's Bishop's Church, which isn't even really like a part of Catholic faith. It's just like its own weird metaphysics,
Right.
which is fine. But it's just they're really, really being not clear to their audience, because anybody that would be looking at this from a Catholic standpoint, you would say, "Oh wow, it brought her back to the church, it brought her back to God," but it's not. It didn't. You know.
Right.
So I guess my thing is, if you're gonna do something outside the Catholic Church and you want to make it new, and that's fine, but separate it.
Right.
You know, he's saying that he advocates strongly for the evolution of the church and for that of spirituality itself. And I feel like that is a very clear statement with what you want. And if that's something you want to do, go and do that separately without, putting Jesus's name, their face on it. You know what I mean?
Or the
Like,
Catholic
go make
name
your
on it.
own.
Or the Catholic
Right.
name.
And don't call it church, you know what I mean? Or don't advocate for yourself and start making people sisters and things because, they're tough or they're strong people. Like, this spiritual welfare is just as dangerous as
Right.
anything else, especially when it comes to exorcism, and it's not something to be taken lightly.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just really disappointed.
Especially when
really
it falls
disappointed.
into the wrong hands. And so basically he's appointed himself as a bishop, and he is appointed, and he has a couple of sisters that work with him. That's just the only one that we've seen on TV. And he has appointed his own sisters/nuns. Without any training, without any seminary training, like Kat said. So it just blows my mind. It's very Scientology-ish to me, personally.
It is. And it's not even dangerous for the person that's getting the exorcism, but it's also very dangerous for the person that's giving it.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have that spiritual, or you don't have, not even so much the faith, but like having spirituality or believing in whatever, to have a light path, you're going to be even more susceptible to something.
Well, that's
because
it could jump to you.
Yep,
It's not just about
exactly.
being
So-
tough. Like, first of all, Erica said, is she claiming to be Native American? No, she's claiming to have had done background history and or studying, practicing shamanism, and that was where I had a problem with it.
She said she has a personal relationship through Native American shamanism. That's all she said. That's all she said in it.
What is that?
So.
What is that?
I don't know.
Excuse me while I
don't
pull the
know.
sword out of my throat.
Fine.
And Ashley said she comes in like a biker lady. Yeah, she comes in really tough. You're right. And I think that she thinks she's facing a demon and she has to be tough, and like that's how you get the demon to jump to you or get your own oppression and possession. And that tells you right there that she hasn't had the proper training that she needs to be facing something like this, because you, like Ashley said, most nuns I've ever met or sisters I've ever met are really kind and sweet ladies, and I'd never see them invest in jeans.
No, but it's true. I mean,
Yeah,
when you're thinking
it's
about
really true.
traditional Catholicism,
Yeah, it's
that
true.
really is, you don't normally see a nun out of their closet. You just don't. And it's not anything against them that they can't wear pants or anything like that. It's just it's
No,
just
but
part
it's
of the tradition,
no, but that's
you
true
know?
though, and that's why. And another thing, like Bishop Brian was asked a question on Twitter saying, why can't women perform exorcisms? Is it because of the Catholic Church? What's the reason for it? Yeah, I mean, once again, we're going back to an ancient religion that is black and white, and it hasn't changed in thousands of years. Why would it now? And also, Kat had a really good point too, is that we think the main reason that men perform the exorcisms is if someone gets violent, sometimes women can't physically stop them. It's just a genetic issue. It's not, and I mean, I agree with that statement, and I'm a feminist, you know what I mean? Also, Kat, you were saying most of the time if a woman is having an exorcism, there has to be a female involved, because why?
Yeah, it's written actually in the canon law for Roman Catholics. So if the female happens to be the one that is possessed and an exorcism does need to happen, it is required that another female be in the room. So whether that be a sister, a nun, or just another female in the room, period, that needs to happen, because when women are, and it's really sad, like it kind of makes me emotional to talk about it, because it's just really sad, but when women specifically are possessed, they become more sexual.
Did you just whisper that in the microphone?
Look, you know what?
She's like, women become sexual when they're possessed.
They become sexual when they're possessed. And there are cases, out there, I'm sure, which is why they probably had to put into canon law that, male priests or captivated by that, or something happened, you know what I mean? And
or a rape would happen or something, right?
Or a rape would happen, exactly. So, you know, it's important to have that in the room, have somebody of the same gender in the room, especially if it's a female scenario.
Right.
So it's very, very interesting and very complex that I'm just really disappointed that if he's studied, you know, Bishop Brian has studied all of this, is going to sit there and account for other people that are going to assist in exorcism that have zero religious background. That's kind of scary. I wouldn't want to be in the hands of somebody.
There's two more. Nikita has a question and Ashley said something else, so we'll get to you guys in 2 seconds. What should we take away from this is the biggest question, because we didn't really come to a conclusion other than spilling the tea earlier. I'm going to say...
there's so much tea.
Right, yeah, there's a lot of tea. So let me just wrap up what we've been talking about, basically. The wrap-up is Bishop Brian is not an appointed bishop from the Archdiocese. That is how you get the title bishop. He has appointed himself that title through his own church that is combined of old Catholic ways, Buddhism, and metaphysics, which makes no sense to me. What he should be doing is, if he's wanting to make something like Scientology, he should just create a whole new religion and just do it that way without using any of these other terms. To say that he appointed himself the title bishop, when that's like the most high you can go in Catholicism below Pope, to me makes me think he's kind of narcissistic. He thinks very highly of himself, because he didn't give himself the title preacher or whatever, priest. He could have been a monk, man. Monk sounds cooler, in my opinion. But he went with bishop. And then on top of that, if that's not bad enough, which it is, he hasn't had the training. He hasn't gone to Rome, which is where you need to go to get this actual training for exorcisms and the bishop title. On top of that, he's wearing the little red skull cap. He knows what that means, and he knows why he's wearing it. He's trying to become reputable with people that just instantly see him or talk about him. And I think it's very misleading, is what I'm taking away from it.
It is.
It's not accurate. So he's kind of like showing this image that's not really accurate of what he truly is and what he's studied, which isn't really fair from a standpoint of like spiritual warfare like Kat did, or spiritualism. But I will also say, I don't think he's necessarily harming people. He's trying to help people in paranormal. You know, like, I think he's trying to create a branch where you can help people in paranormal and that are having these experiences of possession that aren't Catholic and whatnot. So, but I still think it's some narcissism in there. So, like, I don't think he's hurting people, but I think he's really giving himself a large head. Also, that last shot of him walking out looked exactly like the movie from Exorcist, which made me want to throw up. And then on top of that, on his church website, Kat, am I wrong that it says that he's promoting, like, on his own church website about that he was on Ghost Adventures and he's performed exorcisms?
Yep.
So that doesn't make sense to me either. To me, it would make more sense to say, oh, I've helped over 300 people, you know, that were suffering from oppression and possession, rather than bragging about his filming rights. It makes no sense to me coming from a bishop. So I do think that he's trying to portray himself peacefully and like, oh, I'm helping people, and I do think that he actually is doing that. But I also think he's a bit of a narcissist, and I think that he's looking for, you know, he's tailgating Zach a little bit by using Ghost Adventures as a platform, and he's bragging about it. And to me, a holy person or a bishop wouldn't be bragging about being on a show like Ghost Adventures. How do you feel about that, Kat?
I agree, and I think it's also just not right that it's filmed. You know what I mean? Like understand
he's sort of in it for the fame, obviously, right?
It is. It really is. You know, you can still help people and in that way, even if you're not appointed by the Roman Catholic Church, but do it in private. You know, I mean, you don't need to get the praise all the time.
Nikita had that question, but I want to Ashley asked one. She said, can't believe Zach would be so cavalier to this subject. Okay. My opinion on it is that Zach's probably not, he was not raised religious as far as I know, and he's never like studied religion or even gone to church. So I don't think Zach knows a clue what we just broke apart. And I'm going to be honest, I don't think I would even know if it weren't for Kat, because she grew up Catholic and she's so well versed in this. I mean, your mother is literally going to Rome next summer, right? Like, Your family is very dedicated to this lifestyle, so you're very well versed in it. So honestly, I just don't think Zach, and honestly, let's think about a paranormal production, a paranormal film production. Do you really think anyone is hardcore Catholic on his staff?
No, of course not.
No.
But that's also, I think, why he's partly doing it too.
Right.
Is he's wanting people to not ask questions and just say, "Oh, he's a bishop and
Right.
he's part of a church, so
Right.
well, he's fine." You know,
Right.
he's fine.
Right.
But it's way deeper than that.
Yeah.
And it should be out there.
Right.
You know, I mean, this is important information for people to know, for them to be able to make the decision if they want somebody like that in their home or not.
Yeah,
you know?
we should make
Just
it
as anything else.
transparent, 100% transparent. Another question that Nikita had. She's like, I don't know if the exorcism was faked, but it was emotional and disturbing to watch. So let's chat about that for a second.
Yeah.
I didn't like watching it.
It was really hard.
I'm
I
going to be
felt really
honest.
bad
Like,
for
I
her.
love paranormal, and I've been to some dark places, and I've done a lot of investigations, and I have shared my experience of what I thought my friends were having oppressions and possessions that were going on, even on set with Paranormal Challenge. Therefore, since I have literally what I believe witnessed it a few times with my eyes, I had a camera tech in Jerome that I've talked about who was, we think, possessed. He was throwing up green stuff. He was on the bed spinning. It was like out of a movie. Let me be honest and very clear here. I did deal with it. We had holy water. I shouldn't have dealt with it, but it was an emergency. And just let me be clear by stating the last thing in my mind was to freaking film it. Didn't even cross my mind. I was worried about that person. There was a freaking spiritual emergency happening inside of a very haunted hotel. He was my camera tech. We had to do what we had to do as quickly as possible. My PAs were running around like crazy. I had them grabbing like St. Michael candles that we had brought with us and stuff. And the last thing I ever thought was someone get their cell phone and film it. In fact, I remember telling everybody, don't film this. I don't want any audio, nothing. He doesn't even know what he's doing right now. He's not even aware of what's going on. So, yeah, it was uncomfortable to watch. I feel really emotional about watching The Exorcism for a lot of reasons. And one is I feel, was it real that happened? I don't think he was like possessed. Okay, I don't think it was like a demonic possession. I think he was extremely oppressed. He'd been living
same.
with that for a while. You feel the same, Kat?
I do feel the same. I think it could have been a lot worse.
Yes.
Like, I think he was on the verge of a possession if they didn't take care of it right then
Yes,
and there.
right.
Absolutely.
But I still don't think it should have been showed.
I don't think so either.
Because when you're, all of the signs he had, which was turning red and getting sick, throwing up, screaming, wailing, like all of these weird things that were going on is very typical of oppression as well. And he may not have known he was doing any of that. And why would you want to film it in his face? I also am more apt as a producer. I've seen a lot of people on set behind the camera and in front of the camera. And let me just say that sometimes people change when the camera comes on, okay? And I'm not talking about Tori because I think he was being fully authentic. I'm talking about the bishop and the sister. When that camera comes on, they are the stars of the show. And now they have to act even more dramatic and ridiculous than they would in a normal scenario where there were no cameras and lights. So I didn't think we saw fully authentic. We don't really know how long that went on for. I did not agree with watching it. I would have agreed with some audio maybe being played if people needed to believe it. I also think this is a really poor thing to do because it's going to give skeptics an even bigger reason to not watch Ghost Adventures, in my opinion. I think skeptics are going to see this, quote, possession, and they're going to be like, how stupid. Zach did something else extreme, and now we're really not going to watch it, and it's so dumb, and, I don't know if it's real or not. And that's how it leaves people feeling like, I don't know if it's real or not. I do think because he was a veteran that it was real. I don't agree with cameras and lights being on because I don't know how authentic after releasing the credentials of Bishop Brian and Sister Mary, I don't know how authentic they were being on camera. Therefore, I don't want to see them on camera doing an exorcism because I think their personality is more apt to change because now they're the stars of the show. How do you feel about it?
I feel the same way, and I think I feel that way too after seeing his pinned tweet on his Twitter, where he thanked Ghost Adventures and tagged all the crew and said, for their bravery and showing you all the reality of the work that I do each and every day. And it kind of just makes me want to vom a little, because
Right.
I feel like, and especially as somebody that has a family friend and priest who is a monk in a monastery for a long time and has done an exorcism before. That's not something you boast about for pride.
Oh yeah, let's
It's
talk
something
about
you
that.
keep very
That's
quiet.
great key. You have a monk
Yeah.
that's a family priest. You are very close with him. He comes over for game night. You guys have fun. He's a great, wonderful human.
Right.
He has done actual exorcisms, and he does not boast about it whatsoever, does he?
He's a very jokester type of guy. He actually joined the monastery when he was like 15 or 16, and he took a vow of silence for 13 years. Like, that's how dedicated.
So what
he
does a
is.
vow of silence for 13 years mean?
So a vow of silence essentially means that you only speak when you are praying. for
So he
13
was
years.
silent for 13 years.
He was silent for 13 years.
That was how
and he worked in
serious
a-
he took his step in monkhood, basically.
That's how serious it is, and it's different for everybody. Your devotion's different. Everybody stays in the monastery at different points in time and whatever. But he worked, and he worked too. He worked in a candy shop, and he still had his vow of silence, and he took it very seriously. And he's a very jokester type of guy, and anytime we bring it up, or The Exorcist comes on or whatever, he is serious.
Right.
He is dead serious, and it's not a joke. And you're supposed to help these people to help them, not to get a pat on the back or award for that.
Boast
this
about it or brag
serious
about
stuff.
it.
And people's lives are at risk for that. Not only the priest that's doing it, but also the person that's being affected. And it's not something to sit there and be prideful about.
That
You know
was
what
why
mean?
I was really concerned with the website, with him, on his church website talking about being
Not
on
right.
Ghost Adventures was just, it shook me. It shook me. Like, to me, it's like, oh, look at, how much airtime I've had, and, like, I'm famous, and, like, this is what
He's
I've
in
done.
the wrong field. He's in the wrong field.
Yeah.
Because in that field, you're not supposed to sit there and make a big thing about it.
But isn't that
supposed to
part
help
of the
people.
training to become a bishop, Kat?
It is, actually. And it's even part of the canon. It's very private.
Right.
Someone is supposed to document it, so there are documentations of audio, some video, depending on where it's happening or how many people are there, or if it's just the bishop doing it. They need proof, or to document it for Vatican, the Rome,
Right.
write down these things down, and if anything happens, that's kind of like their liability to look back on it. But it's not something to take lightly, and it's not a joke.
Right.
So he pinned that tweet because, great, I'm glad you're doing something, and that's also your job. You don't necessarily get a pat on the back for that, and unfortunately, it's this very selfless act that you have to do, and maybe even just take pride in that privately. Save somebody's life.
The
or,
biggest,
soul.
Ashley said, I'm scared that they're going to come across something they can't handle from lack of training, and I hope no one gets seriously hurt from lack of knowledge. I absolutely agree with that statement. My biggest concern out of this, and I've been repeating it to Kat since we've been talking all day regarding the subject, what I've been repeating all day is, I hope to God there isn't people out there that find out his credentials and see what he's done, and they think they can just turn around and do the same thing without training.
Please don't.
And
Yeah.
oh shoot, my friend's possessed, like I need to perform an exorcism on him. It's like, that's not how it's supposed to be. You know what I mean? Like, so the message here is dangerous, in my opinion. And this is part of I feel on the board of both of it. If he was really doing this to help people and wasn't boasting about it, wasn't calling himself a bishop, wasn't wearing his little red hat, then I would be like, you know what, he's really in this to maybe help people. Like, he's very serious about helping people. But you add all these other things in, and I'm like, man, you don't look very good on the outside here, And same with the sister thing. Obviously she's a veteran of the Army. Thank you for your service. Obviously I have only respect for veterans. She was also, a veteran of the police force too, which means she served her community, which is also a great thing to do. But you can't just become a sister after that. And I just feel like this is spreading really bad knowledge regarding the paranormal community, and isn't that what we're trying to stop constantly?
It's true.
Is bad
And
things
this
coming
isn't-
up to make the paranormal community look bad,
Yeah, and this isn't us to rag on him. This is, if you put something out there, if you put a product out there with people that are questionable, facts deserve to have an answer.
Fact
You know what I
checked.
mean? Like, they deserve to come to the fruition to let people decide what's about it. And I just feel like he's been doing a lot of hiding, and there's been a lot of miscommunication, and I just feel like people should know about it. People should know about it.
It's
He should be
also a
transparent about
reflection
it,
of
too.
Zach and Ghost Adventures too.
And the Catholic Church too. If he's using their name but he's not, I mean, that's a little out there too.
Right.
He's essentially lying to everybody on social media.
Right.
If you're gonna be honest and authentic about something that's completely different and new and out there, be transparent about it.
Right.
There's no shame in that.
No.
You
You have to
No
fully
shame in
live
at
that
all.
though. You
But
can't.
be honest.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
That's it.
Well, whew, was that some tea? I told you guys it was going to be bad tea. Really
we knew
bad.
It was gonna be a long stream.
I don't know what caused us to dip into this. Like, I've always had him in the back of my mind because I was doing the research when he was first being called a doctor, and I was like, wait a minute, like, hold up.
Mm-hmm.
A doctorate of what? Like, Kat, you have your bachelor's degree. It was a long 4 years, wasn't it? I mean, it's true though. Like, to get your actual degrees, like, it's no joke. Like, I still have 5 classes left, and I'm taking like a year off because I'm like, I need a break from everything.
literally.
But like, I'm almost done with my bachelor's degree. It only
Hard.
took me like 20 years to get it. You know what I mean? But like, seriously. So if you're bragging about that educational right, like, please make it an actual, be transparent with people. No, I don't have like a PhD. Like, I'm not an actual doctor. Like, a doctorate in like history is even more reputable than like you went to like a metaphysical school and got a doctorate. Like, I don't even know what that encompasses, honestly. I have no desire to research that. If you want to, please do. But yeah, I feel like if you're gonna be new age, which to me sounds like he's trying to do, he's taking twists of Buddhism, he's taking twists of metaphysics, he's taking paranormal, taking exorcisms, and taking twists of Catholicism and making his own. Fine, be new age, be cool, but like, then don't like still be using the word like bishop and like things that people are automatically gonna think are like full Catholic when you're not. So anyway, and his education's out there publicly.
It's all out there.
Yeah,
It's
he
all out
typed
there.
it himself, right? I mean, it's on the website.
Yeah.
So
It's right on the
then
Twitter
just
page.
be
If you guys-
transparent, man. Like, just be honest, like, and you're not being honest. So anyway, that's the tea. That's a lot of tea. My brain hurts now. And that's it. And like, I kind of look at him differently. I do think that he's trying to help people, but I don't like that he's using the filming credential bragging rights. I think that he's in the wrong field. I think that he's out there just to try to get somewhat famous off of all of this. And it's only a matter of time that people were going to start catching on and figure it out.
It's true.
Right?
It's time for people to know
All right,
truth, so.
Mr. Wannabe Bishop out there and Miss Little Sister there.
Be honest.
Be
Ryan.
yourself. What's that? Do you
Be
remember
honest.
what was that movie, Just Friends, with Ryan Reynolds? Did you ever see that?
Yes.
Be yourself. Be yourself. The mom sings
Get my
it.
uke out. Oh my
Just
gosh,
be
yes.
yourself.
Oh,
All right. I just want to thank you guys, all the subscribers and viewers, for joining us. Please remember to search us on social media under Ghost Girl Diaries, Crystal Leandra, and Kat Cormier. You can find us on our Twitch and YouTube channel. Please support our streams by subscribing to Patreon and Twitch. New Patreon post went up today, and new content is coming this week, which I'm really excited for. There's going to be private podcasts on the Patreon. You can subscribe for as low as like $1 or $2. And make sure you tune in for next stream. Also, heads up, new streams will be Wednesdays will be booze and reviews, and we are changing our Saturday stream to Fridays. We are exploring with different time zones and different times just to see what we're getting as far as viewership. So just stick with us for a little bit till we actually have like a good schedule down. And we appreciate you guys so much as always. And watch for our next stream. Follow us on social media. We will catch you guys next time. Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys.